The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hiya! Toby! Bye-bye! Love you! Bye-bye!
Griffin, please take your seat above us. We're at the entrance. It's time for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost to ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Friday, June 2nd, Saturday, June 3rd, if you're on the East Coast. Hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North in the heart of central British Columbia, as we are live here 7 days a week. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99, Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com. Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Horns up if you like our music. Rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us all over social media, starting on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. And of course, our website is SpacedOutRadio.com. And if you go to Patreon.com, for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR. Now, if you want to take part in this show, we don't take phone calls here. But the one thing we do like to do is be interactive with you. So you got to sign into one of the chat rooms. You can either go to our website and sign in by clicking on Listen Live. You could go to Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or maybe you're one of the lucky ones on Facebook who is a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club like Gail is. Or if you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio and I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Make sure you bring some quality snark. If you head to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store and pick up a t-shirt, poster, a sticker, and good news for our Paracon that is happening September 29th to October 1st at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. We now have VIP tickets on sale in the store. If you're planning on a trip, a weekend getaway, and you want to take advantage of that pricing, it ends July 31st. On our website, we also have a news section called The Encounter Online, put together by our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out my latest blog there as well, and if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tonight, it's the first Friday of the month, which means it's time to bring in our resident ET expert, our Keith Andrews, to come on in and shake things up a bit. Keith is a little bit of a controversial figure in the UFO and alien community because, well, a lot of people are out there who think he spent a lifetime making up these imaginative thoughts, while there's others who believe that he's bang on and that he is as accurate as they come. But what counts for us here on SOR, and the reason why we have Keith on as a monthly guest, is his stories have vetted out. Like the Pleiadians who showed up at the Experiencers Conference the last 2 years in Maine, where multiple witnesses watched an ET named Don have a conversation with Keith, and then somehow disappear without any human exit strategy. Keith's experiences started as a child, since he's had contact one way or another with over 30 different species that he calls the Offworlders. This show is always an interesting night. Our Keith Andrews, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. How are you doing, my friend?
Not bad. It's been kind of an interesting month. Not necessarily the healthiest run for me, including today, but certainly a whole pile of activity, and I just want to let people know, first and foremost, welcome to everybody that's listening, and definitely Dave, thanks so much for having me back. People have asked why I haven't got anything down in writing. I'm actually in the process right now, of putting a book together with the various different races. The challenge I'm going to run into, I'm absolutely certain of, is finding an artist that can draw. That's willing to draw them, because, well, stick men don't work well.
And you know what? I think it's great that you're finally going to put pen to paper here, because I think you've got some very interesting stories to bring forward, and I think everybody could learn something from that book. A couple things about tonight, though, that I forgot to mention, Keith. if you have a question, Keith is very interactive in the chat rooms. He will read your questions live on the air. Keep them smart, keep them educated, keep them in capital letters because, well, let's just face it, Keith doesn't have the best eyesight, so it's easier for us and for me to catch the questions in the chat rooms or on Twitter if you put them in capital letters for us. So please do that if you have the opportunity to do so. Also, once again, down in Florida, there is an Art Keith Andrews party going on at KJ Gandy's house, which means, once again, Keith, did you get your invite? Because I didn't.
No, but I seem to get the impression if I can make it up to the Paracon here, hopefully we'll at least finally get to meet her.
You know, I have to tell you a funny story about Kim. Okay, Kim Gandy is our Director of Business Development around here at Spaced Out Radio. And she loves Keith. She is a big, big fan of Keith's. And so when her and I started discussing her coming on board to run the business side of Spaced Out Radio, she said, I will do everything for you, Dave, pro bono to help you out. I lucked out. But her one request was, I am never allowed to get rid of Keith off the air because she loves you that much, and she is just a big fan of yours. So, you know what? I have to bring up that story because I laugh about it every time because the job that Kim is doing behind the scenes, along with Everett Themer, along with Eric Markham, and so many others, okay, it is absolutely amazing, you know, to watch this happen. So if I have to, Keith, put up with you a little bit more, because everybody knows you and I really don't get along. No, I'm teasing there, of course. But, you know, I think it just shows that you have a lot of dedicated and loyal listeners and fans who love it when you come on this show, and you're going to be with us for a long, long time.
Well, I really do appreciate it. And, you know, oddly enough, I really do appreciate, you know, Kim being that supportive for you. From my standpoint, it still is a little bit odd to have people that are, you know, very well placed in the UFO industry still stop and want to talk to me about this sort of thing, because to me, this is what I call a normal life. The rest of the world is where I run into troubles. You know, it's, you know, when you think about the way, you mentioned that earlier on, you mentioned that some people really like to hear what I have to say. Many people seem to think I'm just straight making up as I go along. And it's, you know, it's like I've told a lot of people, if I were just making it up, you know, if it was just my imagination, considering the fact that my imagination has shown up in, you know, in medical records of people on the other side of the planet, you know, or showing up on NASA's websites, if that's my imagination, then the world is in a lot more danger than just my being nuts. You know.
Absolutely. I know exactly where you're going with that, because there is a danger to all of this. I mean, people who are critics of yours, they don't understand that what you've gone through, because they've never stood in your shoes. They've never been able to understand. Maybe they haven't had that experience. Maybe, you know, their experience was much different than yours, because you've had a plethora of experiences, from the good, the bad, to the downright nightmarish. And in order for you to be able to figure that out, I mean, you've had to go through a lot of experiences. And
yeah, absolutely.
And so where we're going with this show tonight, just so you all know, eventually we will get there, we're going to talk about children of contactees and contactee children. That's going to pretty much be the show topic of tonight, unless, once again, as our great audience usually does, takes it in their own direction, which we always seem to allow with you on. Keith, and I think actually we tried this topic once before with you, but we never really got there because of the fact that the audience just went in a different direction and we just ran with it.
Well, you're talking live radio. And the reality of live radio is, especially given the fact that I am, sometimes I'm certain it's a pain in the neck from your end, but I am quite well known for putting my foot in it when I see a comment in the chat rooms about whatever's being talked about. And I do encourage people to ask questions. And much as it is very important to understand what children go through, the reality is, if a listener doesn't have children and is having a pressing problem themselves, then what the child is going through, no disrespect from the listener to the child at all, but it really doesn't matter to them. It does matter, that it's a terrible thing that a child is going through this, but, it's sort of a case of, but I'm having nightmares here, and I'm waking up with marks that I can't explain. And very few people out there are, quite frankly, answering the questions.
In the Spaced Out Radio chat room on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a brand new listener, EJ Neves from Puerto Rico, who wanted to say hi to you.
Well, greetings. You said
EJ Neves.
EJ Neves.
Yeah.
Well, greetings, EJ, and welcome aboard.
Absolutely. If you got any questions, make sure you put them in capital letters. I will get to them. Now, Keith, there's a lot that goes on, okay? You've been having a tough time. I've let it known to my audience recently that I actually have, the last 10, 12 days, I've been having a very bad bout of depression and anxiety with some things that have been going on in my personal life. And when you suffer from a mental illness like depression and anxiety, there's a lot of people who believe that brings in a lot of negative feelings and not a lot of negative entities. Do you believe that the two are intertwined?
They are, but not in the way that people think. When you're fighting with depression, it lowers your self-defense mechanism. So what ends up happening is, if you're fighting with depression and the negative energy is around you, it's not so much it comes in faster as you pay more attention to it. Okay, so if you're fighting depression and something else goes wrong, let's say you've been having a bad time at work, and so you're fighting that frustration, that anxiety, and then a friend of yours says, like a really good friend of yours goes, oh my, this other person we both know committed suicide. That added stress may be all it takes to set you off and drive you into a real black way of thinking, well, is this how my life is going to end? Because work's already miserable, and, this person took that out. They took that way out. So it becomes an amplifying factor. It's not so much more negative is happening, so much as you're paying more attention to it and thereby giving it more energy.
The questions have started for you in the Spreaker chat room. JFK is asking, when did this all start for you, Keith?
The day I was born. Quite literally. People that tell you that, that tell you that birth is a wonderful experience don't remember it. I could go into a lot of detail. I remember coming down the birth canal. And a very long, from my perspective, abusive time later, I ended up in the incubator on the day I was born. Because according to what Mom and Dad told me, I was born mottled green and black, which is a really bad color in case you hadn't noticed. The long and the short of it was, I pulled the plug. I got out of my body that day, and I took off. I pulled all my life energy out of the body, and I flatlined because I was going home. And it was that day that I ran into the Council of 12, and they turned around, they stopped me from leaving, and they literally went, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. Well, you can't. You signed a contract. You have a job to do. I looked at him and I said, I didn't sign up for this abuse. And rest assured, it wasn't that politely put. You know, and the long and the short of it was, they turned around and said, no, you have a job to do. You have to go back. And so I ended up being forced back in. Well, when I got back, right starting that day, I was seeing the spirit world. I was seeing the off-worlders. I was hearing voices that were just not of the normal, if you will. They weren't normal human questions or normal human thought patterns that I was picking up. Now, I managed to keep it under wraps until I was 10, when it became public knowledge. And from there, we just scrapped the whole idea of a social life.
Next question coming from the audience. How do you know if it was all real or just a dream? That comes from Jackie.
Well, Jackie, the easiest way I can put that is the number of people that, for people that don't have witnesses, the best way to look at it is when you have emotional ties to whatever the memory is, like appropriate emotional ties, that is a dead giveaway. When you're trying to understand what you're seeing and you've only got limited vocabulary that doesn't explain it properly, it's another indicator that it's real. In my case, I've had so many physical witnesses with me when these things have happened that have identified, often before I knew what was going on, about something that had happened. Like in one case, when somebody I was traveling with told me literally I vanished out of their car. Okay. Like I just wasn't there anymore. And, you know, so when you get the number of people that have told me, they've said, you know, where are those marks on your body coming from? You know, where's all the blood coming from? When you get too many people saying the same thing, you just have to go with, you don't have anything solid to prove it, but you go with the circumstantial evidence, keeping an open mind that it may not work. You know, or keeping an open mind that there might be something that derails it. Right? But go with the circumstantial until you find something that derails it.
Moving on with the questions here, JFK is asking, how did it become public knowledge when you were 10?
Well, because, and I forget who the kid was, but I was about 10 years old, and I was sitting on a bed at the ballpark, and this little 16 or 17-year-old kid sat down beside me, and I never have figured out if she said it or if I just picked it up. But what I heard was, I've had a boyfriend for the last 2 years. We used to do everything. Now he won't touch me. He won't look at me. He won't even touch me. You know, what's wrong? And I never blinked. I looked at her and I went, well, because he's sleeping with your best friend. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, they're crawling into bed together. And of course, at 10 years old, you're not thinking of what that really means. Right? And she goes, well, how do you know it's my best friend? I says, I don't. I says, technically, I don't. But you met her like this. She behaves like this. You know, she looks like this. And the girl goes, that was my best friend. I says, you know, I'm probably overstepping, but you might want to reconsider your definition of best. And from that day forward, I had kids coming to me looking to find out what was going on with their life. Was dad coming home from the war? Was the transfer going to happen? Was their boyfriend cheating on them? You know, any number of things. And it sounds really, really kind of odd when you think a 10-year-old has, you know, kids in grade 12 coming looking for guidance. Until you realize that I went to my 30-year grad reunion, the first kid that I ran into took one look at me and he goes, "Weren't you one of the counselors?" And I says, "No." I says, "Actually, I was a student. I just happened to do more work than both counselors combined." And it hasn't stopped.
Let's move on to the next question. Catherine is asking, what is the purpose of a watcher?
Quite literally, they're record keepers. They don't do anything. They simply take notes. Okay. Basically, you have to realize this planet has a staggering amount of information tied to it. So what the watcher does is all they do. They do not interfere. They don't guide. They simply watch. And the thing is, they're supposed to stay hidden because even their visibility, even becoming visible or being noticed, can alter the way people behave. And they're not supposed to do that.
That follows up this question from Craig then. Can a watcher do anything?
Well, technically the term can, yes, but certainly not supposed to. They can physically interact, but it's actually very much against their protocol, their drive.
Makes sense. Let's go over to Twitter here. Question from Deb at #SpacedOutRadio. Have you ever had your blood type and also a brain scan with contrast that would help you pinpoint what part of the brain is more active when you were having experiences?
I would love to give you a definitive answer on that. And the best I can tell you is I went through my lab. I probably did, or more to the point, I can tell you I did, but good luck getting the records. The military's got them. So if you can get them, be my guest. I'd love to see them. As far as what kind of damage was done, this much we do know. When I was 20 months old, I took a fever of 108.4 that flash fried my hypothalamus and essentially split the brain in two. Net result, my EEG looks like I'm mentally retarded. Okay, because it's kind of like hooking an EEG up to two different brain, half of it to one brain, half to the other brain. You're going to get garbage. Mm-hmm. But, and the fact, of course, that I suffer from PTSD triggered by the hospital certainly means I'm not voluntarily going into the hospital to have it checked now.
Why not?
Have you ever suffered from PTSD?
You know what? I can honestly say I haven't, but I have suffered from post-concussion syndrome. That's not fun.
No.
It's not fun at all.
I know you've got listeners out there that suffer from PTSD, and knowing that they are, knowing that it's triggered by the hospital, it is the last place I want to go. It's kind of like somebody that suffers from PTSD because of being in a war. The last place they're going to go voluntarily is to a shooting range.
Exactly. Let's get to Gail's question here. She says, who are the watchers watching for, and why are they watching us?
Well, the who is everybody. And quite literally, and I don't mean just the humans, I mean all of it. And why is because they're taking records. They are the, if you will, record keepers. Oh, by the way, and I don't do that. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I've had to do it. I didn't get a chance to mention because we didn't expect it. Sometime tonight, my youngest is going to come home, and when he does, he's going to end up ringing the doorbell. I'm going to have to, at that moment, take a momentary break, go and let him in, and then come back.
That's okay. We can allow that. How old is your youngest?
12.
Oh, good for you. So he's just learning the talking back stuff now. That's always
fun. Yeah, you're funny.
Yeah, that's fun. That's so much fun.
Actually, I was referring to the fact you're thinking that at 12 he's just learning.
Yeah, I still think there's some hope in children. I just haven't figured out where that hope is yet. But But that makes it nice and easy. Not a problem, Keith. We can definitely expect that to happen. Speaking of children, as we start to get into tonight's topic of discussion with you on the ET Connection that happens the first Friday of every month with you, there's a lot of children out there who have parents who are contactees, and maybe they are in the process of becoming contactees, if not already themselves. So the question that I have for you regarding this, and I'll say it with a story. A couple of months ago, Mrs. SOR noticed our little guy and our dog just staring at the doorway that connects our kitchen to the hallway that goes down to the bedrooms. And they were just staring, looking at the door. Nothing out of the unusual, right? When a dog and a kid are staring at nothing.
Right.
So because Mrs. SOR tends to see things at times, she ended up looking towards the doorway. And that's where she saw a pinkish purplish hue in the doorway with big black eyes standing there. And then it disappeared. And then, she didn't feel any danger. She didn't feel anything that was out of the ordinary from our daily life in the paranormal capital of British Columbia. The Kmart special, blue light special house that I have for the weird and strange. But it was odd to her because that was her confirmation that our little guy had actually seen things. And it was you who also stated that in his first 18 months of life, he had been taken twice and that he was no longer going to be taken, which I have had confirmed from a couple other people that I trust in this field. So when it comes to kids, how wary, if we are experiencers ourselves, do we have to be about our children?
Well, in all fairness, you really have to look at the children and, yes, keep an eye on them. Watch for signs that you recognize. Like for the parents that have gone through it themselves, and then the parents that have gone through it and now suspect the children are going through it. Watch for the signs and do your best to help them. It's going to be a rough run anyway. But is there anything you can do to safeguard? People are not going to like the answer to this. The answer is no. Okay. Because frankly, humans on the whole cannot interrupt a matter relocation device. They just can't. So you sort of have to go, yes, I'm going to do my best to educate the child. I'm going to do my best to help them cope with the struggles and cope with my struggles. But is there any? It's not like where you're dealing with humans and you say, don't talk to strangers, because they don't play by the same rules. So, and I know that's not a good answer in one sense, but there's not a lot that you can do about it aside from educate the kids to not just inherently fear all of them. Yes, there are bad off-worlders. There's bad people. Okay, there's bad ancient races. But you get you help your children understand that there's also good in everybody. And this does not mean you turn a blind eye and say, well, it's only good things out there. It's not. Getting stressed out over, is my child going to be taken? Well, let's put that in perspective. About 80% of the people, of the adults that are taken, their children will be taken, and the odds are their parents were taken. Okay, because it does tend to happen in bloodlines.
Well, that opens up the next question then. If, let's say, I'm having negative experiences, and there's a lot of people out there who are having negative, does my child then automatically get those negative experiences as well if it continues down the bloodline? Or is he or she still receptive to positive, benevolent contact?
Well, they're still definitely open to the positive. Many times, a child and an adult going through the same experience will see it as, the children will see it as positive. The adult going through exactly the same treatment will see it as negative. Okay? Because when it comes to perceptions, children tend to be a lot more open-minded and a lot more curious than what adults are. Adults get into this idea of, you're taking me against my will and therefore this is bad. Whereas children, on the whole, go, this is a neat ride and they're not hurting me, given that they're not hurting them. Right. And they go with it, which opens up all sorts of doors, from that end. So, yeah, the kids are definitely still have that option of a positive experience. And just a quick little side note, I've seen it asked 2 or 3 times. Matter relocation device, what you'd call a teleporter. People keep asking what it is.
Daryl also said she is tweaking her aluminum hat for tonight. She's got the tinfoil going for protection.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Let's get to a question on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. This one coming from Wisteria Whisper. Keith, have you ever suffered from severe cluster headaches? They can produce bizarre hallucinations.
Quite frankly, yeah, to the point of being dead. That being said, yes, they can. But if I was suffering from that many, I'm pretty certain, according to the doctors, that would have turned my brain to mush completely. They might not be wrong there. No, the sad reality is, do I get them on any sort of a regular basis? No. And, there is a very big difference between an hallucination that leaves you wondering if you saw something and a physical interaction that leaves you with gashes that are fresh and bleeding. This is just one of those indicators that things are a little bit more screwy.
Getting back to my little guy for a second here. And I like using this as an example because, a lot of people are afraid to talk about children with this. And, well, it's kind of my job being behind this microphone in order to use examples at times. You had mentioned to me, along with other people whom I've had this confirmed with, that he is no longer on the track. He's already been taken the times that he is supposed to be taken, and that will be that for him. Why do they just shut it off like that?
Well, in many cases, if you're doing an experiment, if you're tracking a certain enzyme or a certain genetic structure, they will only track it till the, if you will, target of their experiment ages to a point where that chemical reaction is no longer leaving them inside the parameter of the experiment they're doing. Okay. So, and there's any number of reasons why, parameters that they may be looking for, but an obvious one, if you're trying to track kids until they hit puberty, okay, when they hit puberty, that abduction process will stop. Okay. If you're looking to track a child until the first time they shave, okay, the first time that person shaves, because it does leave genetic marker on that first day. As a matter of fact, every day after that you do it. But if that's what they're looking for, then on that day, whenever the person decides that's when they're going to start shaving, it kills the experiment. That's the end of it for them.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I do have a daughter as well, who I'm actually quite surprised is listening to the show right now. Love you, baby. has never been taken. She's more connected to the paranormal. So why would they choose one and not the other?
Well, again, you could be looking at any number of things. One, if the mind is too well developed for what they're aiming for, or if they suspect that it is too well developed or that it will pick up on things that they don't want to deal with, they'll leave it behind. The other issue is, in the case of this one in particular, it may be simply a case of, yes, they're interested in the bloodline, but they're only interested in the male side of it. And let's face it, your daughter doesn't fit in that side of it.
True that. She's commenting on Facebook to me right now, and she says, I'm too smart to be abducted.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but no, she's not.
She's just being a smart ass right now, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Let's get to a couple other questions here. Where are we here? Let's get to Catherine's question, and she is asking, let's say someone was being abducted and they had signs like bruised legs and whatnot. How would that person change the experience from negative to positive?
Well, one of the biggest things is you have to basically you really have to learn to relax when you start, like, maybe I should try one thought process at a time. What do you think? When you're waking up with bruises, if you don't remember the event at all, it is best to sit back, quite literally relax and think back and deliberately track your memory and hunt through the memory, because the record will be there, and figure out what caused it. By understanding why you're bruising, you can help yourself relax a little. And quite often the bruising is because of the struggle. And if you can bring yourself to deal with the idea that aside from the bruising, you're okay, then what ends up happening is it won't create so much bruising on the next one or the next few, which will make it easier to deal with. And there are people that are going, well, I don't want to be taken at all. And I feel for them, and, well, that is unfortunate. I'm yet to find a way to actually convince the off-worlders that taking people isn't necessarily a good idea. But I'm pretty certain that lions and tigers have the same problem with human scientists taking them and doing blood tests.
I could see that as well. But as tonight, as we pertain to children, just because a parent is an abductee does not mean that the child will go, does it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Many times, why they will skip a generation, sometimes two, before they go. Before they go and pick the next one in the bloodline up. Mm-hmm. So just because one person is being taken does not categorically mean other members of the family will be.
Right. And that makes sense. Let's get to another couple questions here. This one from Daryl. She is asking, Keith, what has been causing pressure enough that you wake up with nosebleeds? Or like her friend Mike, with bloody eyes from burst blood vessels, feeling pressure?
Well, one of the first things, the first thing I always encourage people in a case like this is quite literally go to what passes for in today's world and get your blood pressure levels checked to see what you're dealing with from that side of it. But what can cause it is there's two things that can cause it. If you're taken into a place where blood pressure is high, where the pressure is higher, it can rupture the blood vessels. Okay? And that can happen in the eyes, it can happen in the nose. You can also have the same problem if you're taken to a place that is extremely dry. And in a place that is extremely dry, it's much more frequent that the nose will end up being the bleeding thing. It's rare that eyes are. But an increase in blood pressure will and has been known to cause eyes to bleed. Okay, unfortunately, the human body isn't indestructible, and that's where you run into some complications.
All right, let's get to Gail's question here. Gail is asking, Keith, what was your experience with my lab like, and how old were you when that happened?
Started when I was born, like within the first week or so. As far as what it was like, I got to witness 197 of my friends get murdered in front of my eyes. So let's just say it wasn't enjoyable. Out of 200 of us, 3 of us got out alive. So, I mean, there are things that, like I've seen people that have been injected with things that have literally dissolved their body while they were sitting there, trying to figure out what the limits were, or trying to, and of course, forcing the rest of us to watch in the hopes that the added stress would trigger our higher senses. I remember, and I mean, there's a lot.
You okay?
That depends on your definition.
Do you want to change questions?
No, they need an answer. I'm just not exactly having fun with it. One of the biggest problems with it is, of course, we've got the listeners right now that will go, "Oh, he's just pausing for
dramatic flair."
Thank you. And I really wish that were the case. But when you watch what these people do, and when you've seen so many of them do it, and then everybody turns, and I've seen the people in the UFO Society do it constantly. I've actually been, the first time I went out to the Experience Or Speak program, conference.
Yes.
I was accused of faking a problem to get attention. And I'll tell you, if there's one thing that does cause a problem for me, it's that kind of behavior. And don't get me wrong, whoever it was that asked the question, I certainly do not blame them for it. Do your best not to take that one, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to a new question here. This one comes from Craig, and he is asking, Keith, have you ever been shown documentaries about things like NSA or other secret programs?
Absolutely. And quite frankly, the ones that have been shown don't begin to tell you what they're really like. Even the ones that have been, so to speak, declassified only show you the barest minimum of what they actually are up to. The odd part about it, and I can understand why they do some of it. Okay. Like the issue of, people complain about the NSA tracking what's going on and not telling everybody. Well, the unfortunate part is that if everything were revealed to what is really going on, we would have absolute flat-out panic on a global outlook. Okay. The nice little part about it is what they tell you about the NSA, about those types of programs, is they tell you they're trying to do it for the betterment of mankind, which is a crock. They're trying to build a weapon. And unfortunately, the NSA is trying to contain things to avoid global panic. And I really don't blame them for that. I mean, people still have trouble with people that are black as compared to white. Picture what happens when you get a reptilian walking down the street.
Is that reptilian in go-go boots and blasting disco on the Ghetto Blaster?
Well, that would be nice, but, you know. You know.
Asking for a friend there.
Oh, that depends entirely on the reptilian. And there are some that are a little twisted. By the way, who is this? Parasy to Milton? You know.
That's Daryl.
That's
she has about 45 different identities. Tonight she chose Parasite.
Oh, okay. Well, from that respect, you know, quite frankly, I appreciate her going that she's sorry about it. I'm pretty certain she wasn't responsible, but, you know, thank you very much for that. It's, to say the least, not an enjoyable run.
Well, let's go ahead.
You know, but it is what it is.
All right. I'm going to end the questions on My Lab Agenda. We just heard Keith kind of get a little choked up there. So we're going to stick away from the My Labs, everyone. We're going to get to Catherine's question here. She's saying, Keith, how fast can you become in contact, and what information can you ask for?
Pretty much when I want to, as far as the telepathic side of it goes. And as far as the information goes, all I, in all fairness, am looking for myself is to make sure that they are being, and when I say they, I'm referring to the off-worlders and, for that matter, the ancient races, to make sure they aren't getting edgy about the whole idea of, well, let's just put an end to this problem and straighten it out like so many humans keep asking. You know, there are some pretty big, well-developed factions that feel that if humans want the off-worlders to straighten out this planet, why don't we? Right. And the countering point there is they're not supposed to. We created the mess, like we being the people of this planet. Therefore, it is the duty of the people of the planet to straighten it out.
I am definitely getting this question in. This one comes from Les at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Keith, what kind of pizza do you like? Or what do you like on pizza?
Myself, that's the easy part. As much meat, preferably red, as in either wild game or beef, as I can get away with. And I certainly have a penchant for anchovies when I can find them.
Really? John is asking, Keith, are any of your aliens named Carl? Asking for a friend. Brilliant question, John. Brilliant question at hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
You know, I really needed that in all fairness. And the answer would be no.
No, you know what? Actually, I was talking with Carrie, our graphic designer who did the Spaced Out Radio posters. And we are actually going to be creating for the website very soon here Carl wanted posters. We're going to be creating them. Damn it, Carl. Where the hell are you? Now, you said, Keith, the last time you were on, that Carl's planning a return this fall.
That Carl is?
Carl, yeah. Carl the alien at my window.
Oh, okay. Don't mind me. Of course, I'm going back to the movie here. You know? And the answer from that standpoint is yes. By the feel of it, that is exactly what is being looked at. Now, whether he's supposed to or not is another question altogether. But like all people that get something in their head, what they're supposed to do is not necessarily what they do.
Really? So what the hell's happening with Carl? What's he up to right now?
I think about 4 foot.
Well, I realize that. He looked about 5 feet when I saw him. I actually, believe it or not, I was Googling the other day, because everybody always asks me about Carl. We'll talk about Carl for a couple of minutes here because we're only about 2 minutes before we go to break. And I finally found a picture that almost looks identical. Almost looks identical, Keith. And it gave me the heebie-jeebies when I saw it.
And, you know, in all fairness, it really would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially if you're not expecting it, if you will.
Absolutely. And it was very weird because the minute I saw that picture on Google Images, so if you go to Gray Aliens, that's all I did, it brought back absolutely staring at that face. I mean, it wasn't identical. The eyes in the picture that I have are a little bit smaller, and he's got this crease going up his forehead in the photo, which I don't recall Carl having that. I know there was a crease going up to, the eyebrow bones, but not much further than that.
Right.
But that picture, man, that picture gave me the absolute heebie-jeebies in what was going on there. And I'll tell you, talk about some PTSD in regards to alien contact. That was one of them. That was one of them that really got me going. Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on right now. We're going to step out for our first break of the night on Spaced Out Radio. It's always a good time when our Keith Andrews is here. He's here the first Friday of every month. Sorry, I had to sneeze. But Keith is here the first Friday of every month, and he will next be back on Spaced Out Radio Friday, July 7th. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Make sure you check out the Paracon commercial coming right up. Coming September 29th to October 1st, the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon. Hi, this is Dave Scott. The event will be held at the Spruce Hills Spa and Resort in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Come join us for an amazing weekend of speakers talking all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Sasquatch, intuitiveness. Listen to great speakers like Miriam Delicato, Samantha Mowat, and the crypto guru Ronald Murphy. Get your VIP passes by going to spacedoutradio.com and clicking on the Paracon banner. Come to BC, where the paranormal is waiting for you.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along with us. Tomorrow night and Sunday on the program, back in the cabin as I wander off to find my zen, my chi, my peace, my life. I bring in Elizabeth Anglin and Uncle Jimbo James Tyson for Spaced Out Weekend starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, as they are going to rock the cabin while I am off venturing into the unknown. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, once again at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome everyone listening in at WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are also live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well during the show. We are live as well on KTLK, The Fringe FM, out of Las Vegas, Renegade Talk Radio. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Texas, yes. Texas. Bill, really? Seriously, man. It's Friday night. Let me go on an easier term. Text us, yes. I have to say it in syllables, but that is your password of the night on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. Our website is SpacedOutRadio.com, where if you head to our store right now, until July 31st, you can pick up with a 10% off, and take advantage of that. We're giving 10% off if you buy your VIP packages for the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon at the beautiful Spruce Hills Resort and Spa, in September 29th to October 1st. So we'd love to have all you space travelers come up and join us. It's going to be a great time. While on our website, you can pick up your t-shirt, you can pick up your sticker, your poster. Soon, Carl the Alien Head calendars. Calendars. I've said calendars like 3 nights in a row. Candles. I'm rattled right now. I'm rattled. Let's just get down to the show. Enough of this. Get to the show. Keith, welcome back.
Thanks for having me there, Dave.
Oh my God, really? It's like serious. All of a sudden, the tongue-tied comes out, and you're trying to recover. Worst thing that can happen in radio. Worst thing. But we made it through. Our Keith Andrews comes in the first Friday of every month. His next appearance will be Friday, July 7th, as he comes on in for the ET Connection. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and welcome back to all the listeners and newcomers and and repeat visitors alike. I mean, it's some of the questions that are coming up are remarkable, and as we've seen both with you and sadly with me, sometimes you run into problems on live radio, but that's how you know it's live, because it doesn't always run smooth.
Absolutely. Let's get to some questions from our audience right now, because I know we'll probably talk Carl again later on. This one comes from Deborah, and she is saying, Mr. Andrews, who are the most amicable of the species you have met?
Well, from my standpoint, the Srazosians have been definitely some of the most amicable. Pleiadians are wonderful people. The hybrids are easier to deal with than the purebreds. And I find that the fairy folk are a lot of fun to be around. There's a lot of good qualities in a lot of them. The Nords are an incredible group of people, although a little high strung. From my standpoint, most of them are pretty congenial as far as willing to talk to you once you explain to them that you actually have an idea of what you're doing. But in all fairness, it was the Srazosians that saved my life. So, I guess that probably has something to do with why I've got this issue about them being rather on the amicable side for the most part.
Let's get to another question here from JFK. Have you ever heard of Corey Goode, and what is your take on him? And are you aware that Kerry Cassidy says what he said in regards to his truthfulness?
Well, sadly, we'll start with no. I have no idea who Corey Goode is, but that being said, that's never stopped me from making an opinion once I've got an idea of what is being said. As far as Kerry goes, I have spoken to her personally, and she, on the whole, is a good judge of character. So, I don't honestly know what she said about him, but you can bet she wasn't going to sit there and lie to you about what she was thinking.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Remember, if you can do me a favor, make sure if you have any questions in the chat rooms for either Keith or myself, make sure you put them in capital letters, because we do not want to miss any questions whatsoever. This show is about you and you learning and your experiences, and that's why we bring Keith on every single month to do this. The topic du jour is experiences with kids, but we're just kind of running into the questions here. The preacher is asking, do you think the reason the off-worlders don't worry about pain, killing, is that they think that they are going to remove that memory. No harm, no foul. Or are they just unempathetic?
In most cases, it's a case of they do their best anyway. They do count on the memory submersion, the memory overlay, to help with it. But on the whole, they try and keep the pain blocked out. There is one race that I know of in particular that actually inflicts pain because they just don't care whether people feel it. But when you look at the vegans don't feel pain and therefore have no way of stopping it. They don't understand it, they don't experience it, and they therefore they cannot correlate people screaming when they're being examined, because to them there's no such thing as pain. It's just there's no word for it, there's no feeling for it.
All right. To Mario's question here, he's saying director Neil Blomkamp, with the movies like District 9, Chappie, Elysium, is doing another movie called Oak Studios, in which it shows an alien/reptilian invasion. Do you think this is Hollywood's manner of disclosure?
In many cases, yes. Now, I don't know about this specific producer. And in all fairness, I haven't watched the show, so I don't know. I can't comment on the veracity behind it. But Hollywood has been for decades using their media to get people used to the idea of off-worlders. It's just unfortunate that many times they focus on the negative side and who got, and the aliens invading Earth. The idea of it being a reptilian race that's coming in to invade the Earth, to conquer Earth, was done back in the late 70s with V. And as it was then, it still is today. If the aliens wanted to override Earth, you wouldn't know about it as a race, as a planet, until the fight was over. By the time you figured out you were under attack from an off-world race, the fight's already finished. Make sense?
Yeah, it's a little rough, that's for sure.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, I mean, to each their own. Bygones. You just can't play the bygones card, All right. While we're waiting for more questions from our audience, because I know they will absolutely hammer us all night, as they normally do. And just as I say that, here comes Daryl's question. Keith, what do you or anyone know about the Earth-sized object that hit Jupiter on the 26th of May? Any idea what it was? It made quite the explosion.
Well, it wasn't an asteroid, let's eliminate that. But they won't find a wreckage. Frankly, from what I gathered, it was, this is going to sound bad, but from what I gathered, it was a scout ship that was quite literally designed to look more like an asteroid than anything else. It wasn't supposed to hit Jupiter, in case you're wondering. But there won't be anything left of it for anybody to find.
Well, aren't you just a gentle soul tonight? Just a gentle soul. Seriously. Let's get to another question here. This one from BTO, who is asking, how deep have you, Keith, gone? Earthly, solar, galactic, universal? Do you utilize Akashic records where you are getting your understandings, perspectives, and experiences from?
Well, do I utilize the Akashic records? The answer to the first part is yes, as far as how deep I've gone. Do I use Akashic records periodically? Yes. However, most of what I deal with, most of the information I'm sitting on, is because of active memory. I've mentioned on the show before, I've mentioned that I watched this planet being built. The truth behind it is I've watched what people call the Big Bang happen at least 3 times. Okay, where the universe has been wiped out and rebuilt. So, I mean, for me, this is just, shall we say, another day in the life. But the thing is, I've been watching this area evolve for, eons. So, this is why I tell people, and I told one chap years ago, I should really look into researching some of this stuff instead of just living it. And because most of the information I've got is because of going through it.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to another question here. This comes from BTO again. What do you make of the Lyran, Orion, Marduk wars?
Well, aside from being retarded, as in wars are kind of pointless, they do happen very much like human wars happen. Basically, you're looking at 2 people that decided they didn't like each other and they're putting other people out there to do the fighting. But these wars are a lot more violent than what mankind's are. I mean, death is death, just not on the same scale.
That'd be one hell of a battle to watch. I wish they had cameras up for that.
Yeah, no, you don't. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should say, be careful what you wish for.
Well, it would be fun. It would be interesting to watch. Let's get to Catherine's question. Keith, what do you dream about? With so much information available to you, where does your subconscious take you?
Well, ironically, most of the time, if I'm having a good day, it goes back to Lemuria. And for those of you who are not aware of Lemuria, Lemuria was a human civilization on this planet where we had actually attained, with over 10 billion on the planet, we had attained true universal global peace. There was no war, there was no prejudice, there was no fear. Yes, people still passed away. Yes, accidents happened. But all of this petty bickering and the petty political positing and all of that side of it just flat out didn't exist. If I'm looking at the other side of it, is I look to, quite frankly for me, I look to a future where, number one, and this is going to be a little on the selfish side, I don't have to struggle day to day to eat, to put food on the table for my family. And that's pretty much what a lot of people dream about from that end. And the only reason I'm looking at the positive side of it is because the nightmares that I have are, quite frankly, more accurately described as night terrors. So when I do have the positive side of it, and that's more often when I'm thinking, I focus, like when I'm awake and thinking about it and dreaming of it, if you will, I really do look at the world from the standpoint of there has to be a way to get people across the globe to realize that life is far too important and far too enjoyable to focus on the petty differences, and get people to start focusing on the positive side, on the similarities and the commonalities between the different races and the different peoples. This is why we usually, and I know you get frustrated with it on occasion, Dave, but it's because of that on occasion we get off on a tangent of just how dense the human race really is at poisoning their own planet.
Go ahead.
That's why one of the biggest things that I look at, one of my biggest drives, is because I keep dreaming of a time when people actually get the message. You know, it has worked on a small scale. There's a park right near me where when I first started working with the kids, they were always at war with each other. And now they're all getting along. You know, they still have differences, but at least it's not all out and out love. All out and out love, all out and out war. You know, where they actually work together. And frankly, if I can take a group of skateboarders, scooter riders, you know, cyclists, and get them to get along, if the churches and the different denominations could even take a hint at the way these kids interact with each other, we'd be in so much better shape.
Greg has a question. He's saying, Keith, do you know anything about a sort of battle or change around Good Friday?
Well, there is a change coming, all right, but it's not exactly a battle. So, I mean, there will be a change coming up.
I'm assuming he's talking about the one that just passed.
I'm going to ask you a really silly question.
Yes.
Good Friday, that was just a little while ago, wasn't it?
Yes, you know,
yeah.
the day we celebrate Christ.
Yes, I just have trouble with which day of the week I'm on. Never mind what day of the month. Pardon me for that one. You know, the reality is the battles themselves that are going on, I haven't really noticed myself a real correlation between one day of the week and the next, and that's probably because I have trouble tracking one day of the week to the next.
Let's move on here. Daryl is asking, how scary could a first Big Bang be? How weren't you scared to death? Do most people die of fright during that Big Bang? How long does it last?
The Big Bang, quite frankly, the reason, well, for me, it's because, how do I put this? Because I'm not affected the same way. You know, I'm not built the same way most people are. As far as are most people scared to death by it, no, because it wipes out the entire existence of the universe. So it's not death that kills them. It's complete molecular disassociation. You know, so there is no fear involved. It's just literally the world collapses. Okay, and as far as how long, well, in human terms, you're looking at a number of eons. In the space-time continuum side of it, it really is a blink of an eye. You know, but because I've seen so much and because I remember so much, I really don't fear what people call the end of the world or death or the end times. To me, that's just it's kind of like breathing. You know, not always enjoyable, but you get used to it.
On Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, Wisteria is asking, Keith, do you have friends which are alien experiencers like yourself? If not, are you mostly by yourself outside of work?
I am probably one of the biggest recluses possible. You know, in all fairness, I have very few, like there's a lot of people that our guests here, like the listeners, will ask me, but as far as people that are close to me, very, very few people, because, well, I don't see the world the same way, and I've literally isolated myself, not only from people, but even from my own bloodline, because of the issue of not being able to explain, if you will, in a way people can get. You know, like when you asked if I would come out when you asked Dave if I would come out to the Paracon, you know, I am going to come, don't get me wrong, assuming, of course, I can get the money sorted around to make the trip, which is still the biggest question. But most of my time, I literally am on my own. I've tried having a partner. And that has backfired in a rather unfortunate fashion on all three occasions, which is why I am very reticent about letting people close from that standpoint. But does this mean I'm miserable? No. A little disappointed in a lot of ways. But I am, like I said, I'm very much a recluse. I don't, people have asked, well, where do you read all your information? I don't. In all fairness, I spend more time on the computer here than I do on my own time, aside from when I'm writing. But I don't do, and I know that, like, for instance, you, Dave, I'm sure you notice that there has been a marked decrease in the amount of time I'm on Facebook, even, for just that reason.
For sure. You're very rarely on, that's for sure. Very on. Let's get to Bob's question here. Bob is asking, are there planet-sized ships inside our sun's corona that can't be seen by the naked eye?
Yeah. And rest assured, the American government was some ticked when I pointed it out.
This leads to the second part of that question. Who are they and what's their agenda?
Well, they are, quite frankly, they are tied to the Galactic Consortium, and for the most part. Now, there's two groups that are in there. The ones that are connected to the Galactic Consortium are there as a precaution should we end up with a problem in here that the current locals cannot cope with. Okay. However, there's a neat little planet inside the sun's photosphere by the name of Vulcan that is occupied by another race. And, well, their purpose of being there is because they live there. Okay, but if people are worried that they're mounting, they're massing for a sudden attack, no, not even remotely. At least more to the point, they're not massing for any sort of a attack on Earth. Against Earth. Okay, that's the, it's like I've told people, there are enough ships inside the sun's corona that, frankly, if they were to all set down on Earth, you wouldn't have any room left for us. And yes, that does mean there's a whole sheepload of them there.
Are they using the sun kind of like a gas station? Is that what they're doing?
In some cases, yes. There is a very simplistic way of using the fuel from the sun to run the electron drive. Okay, and the electron drive is, I'm actually in the process, you're going to love this one, I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to document it. Because I started working on the formula, it quite literally is the oscillodensification of the tritransdenspatial equipolarity. But trying to get people to understand that might be a little bit of a challenge. But yeah, it really is an issue of utilizing the if you will, chemical reaction, the natural reaction, so to power their systems.
Preacher has a question here, and he is asking, is the moon a hollow space station for off-worlders?
No. The moon is a moon. It's a chunk of rock. Are there people living inside it? Are there people living off, on the surface? Absolutely. And you're going to love this one, but it also has a low-grade atmosphere. Not as well-developed as Earth, but that's understandable. Although with what mankind is planning on doing, that could well change within the next lifetime or so. Okay, they're working on a program that if they get it together right, could significantly alter the configuration of the global configuration of the moon, which, by the way, will also have an interesting effect here.
Getting back to the sun for a second, Catherine wants to know what your knowledge is in regards to the center of the sun. Is the universe truly just a machine?
Well, let's eliminate... Well, okay. The center of the sun is... I mean, it's not solid. Okay, not by planetary definition. It is a massive energy field. You know, it's a huge... I think the best term I can use for it is it's a huge fusion reactor. Okay, and I think that's the best way to put it. As far as is the universe really just some sort of massive machine, the answer is no. It is essentially it's a living organism, but as long as we understand, as long as we qualify that we are not talking about a physical construct that has a definitive pattern to it as a machine, no, the universe is not a machine. However, it does have some incredibly intricate machinations that create a phenomenal picture. You know, and it does run in cycles. But we are not talking about a static cycle. Okay, like it is a free-flowing, it's a free-flowing, existence, if you will.
Let's move on to another question here, my friend. This one comes from BTO. I love this question. He says, Keith, your experiences are pretty cool. And I'm trying to just put this together. Sorry, it doesn't make sense to me. Has Mr. Andrews experienced his most expansive self beyond this universe yet?
Well, I understand the question, and the answer would be yes. What I have seen, and can I prove it? Not a snowball's prayer. But I have literally seen things that go so far beyond human ken that trying to explain them is going to be a massive problem. Picture, if you will, taking a look at the universe as just one cell in the human body, and then take yourself out and let yourself see that one cell amplified to the point of a larger body. Okay. To say that there is no end to what is out there is an understatement. But it is something that does have a definitive pulse of life to it. And when I talk about everything being connected, I do mean literally all of it is connected. I hope that answers the question he's looking for.
All right, let's move on here to another question. I know they're here. I'm stuck scrolling up and down because I don't want to miss any of them.
You do, eh?
Yeah. You and I are like doing the same thing, man. We're both on the mouse pad, just rolling that ball up and down. So if I've missed your question so far, or Keith has missed your question, please retype it in one of the chat rooms. Mario is asking, Keith, have you noticed a weather phenomenon, earthquakes in Alaska a few days ago? Do you have a feeling of what could be causing all of this?
Yeah, I do, but... And here's where it gets complicated. Number one, have I noticed it taking place? The answer is yes. Is it getting worse? The answer is yes. There are a couple of things that are causing it, and, this can get us sidetracked really fast, so I'll apologize ahead of time to you, Dave. But it's because what is amplifying the problem is the amount of negativity that people are, on the whole, propagating against each other. It is creating such a massive such a massive biomagnetic pulse that it's throwing the entire cycle offline. And this is where people have to realize that if you continue fighting with each other, you will continue to disrupt the balance of nature. Now, the planet does go through certain growth curves on its own. And there's a few of them that there's nothing that anybody's going to do to stop, not the least of which is the quake that is centered quite literally 150 miles due northwest of the Washington State-Oregon border. Okay, that is something nobody's going to stop. It is going to happen, and people will just have to deal with it. And that's not going to be fun for anybody. But what's pushing it into extreme levels is mankind's treatment of itself and of the planet in general. Which I realize people keep telling me, well, just because I put one piece of litter on the ground, that doesn't do any damage. And I will grant you, one piece wouldn't matter. It really wouldn't to any great degree. Put 100,000 in the same yard. Then you have a problem. But that's what's causing the amplification of it.
BTO is asking, Keith, your experiences yourself, do you believe you are some sort of unique, universal creator, pardon me? That is a very dangerous question for me to answer. And the reason for it is because it can go in so many different directions. Am I unique? The answer is yes. There is absolutely no question there at all. Understand something very critical. So is everybody else on the planet. Am I extremely rare in my understanding of the universe? Absolutely. Now, whether I am some sort of a major creator, let me put it this way, because I'm going to do my dangest to avoid putting my foot in my mouth all the way to the hip here. The best way I can put it is I let people that meet me decide whether or not I fit that bill. Because it's not so much who I think I am that is going to make the difference in this world, in the world around me. It's a question of what other people think I am and how they behave on it. And I know, the person that asked the question is going, well, you didn't answer the question. And to the answer to that, they're absolutely right. Because if I answer it at all, if I give a direct answer, one of two things. Either people are going to go, oh, he's just wanting to make a name for himself, or he thinks he's better than everybody. Or they're going to go the other direction and go, that's not possible. Okay. So, I really don't know how I could give you a direct answer on that, aside from what other people think of me and what I say is far more important than what I think of me and what I say. Although, in all fairness, I've gotten used to me. Most people haven't. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another question here. Karen is asking, who is on the moon?
Who is on the moon?
Yes.
Well, let me put it this way. I can think of about 30 races offhand that are on the moon. This is not a question of the moon being one race. This is a question of multiple races interacting in a, quite frankly, community environment. Essentially, if you will, something along the lines of a great big trading post. Okay, like a huge meeting place. And, the races that aren't there, on the whole, aren't there because, well, frankly, they don't fit very well in that kind of an environment. And by the way, the other aspect is mankind will tell you we haven't been to the moon in some 25 years. That's just a flat-out lie, at least from my perspective. And yes, people can say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Let them say it. You know. But there's a staggering amount of people. I get a kick out of it when people talk about the dark side of the moon being, absolutely black. It's the side of the moon facing the sun. And there's a lot more activity over there than people think. Make sense?
It's just a good Pink Floyd album. That's what it is. A good Pink Floyd album.
I will take your word for that.
Absolutely. You got to listen to it, man. It's good. Yeah. Maybe a little hippie lettuce and some go-go juice, and you will be just fine. Just fine. Susan has a question for you. She is asking, you have mentioned having more than 5 physical senses. Many musicians have I can't pronounce that word, where one sense triggers other senses simultaneously. Do you think you have this as well, and it could be a prominent alien genetic in a human? Synesthesia. Synesthesia. Sorry, I caught it quickly. This is what happens when I don't pre-read questions.
Yeah, you too, eh? Open mouth, insert foot, figure out how to get the other one in beside it. The answer is yes. Okay. Now, I know that's kind of a Reader's Digest answer. Synesthesia is the ability to essentially combine multiple senses. But, and it is, that's more an ability than it is an actual sense. However, many of the senses that people have, and specifically with me personally, are very, they're either more specialized senses, like, for instance, your tongue has a sense of touch, so does your hand, but they're two varied, they are both varying degrees or varying aspects of the same sense. When I talk about...
That would be the doorbell. Well, actually, his phone of his son ringing in, as Keith said in hour number 1, when his son got home from his night out with friends, Keith would be just running to grab the doorbell. So we have to get that in there as well. Keith comes on this show the first Friday of every month with the ET Connection. His next appearance on the show will be on July 7th. And you guys keep your questions coming. You guys got some great questions for Keith tonight. You've kind of taken this in a whole different direction than where I wanted to go with this. But that's okay. That's why we do this. Are you back? All right.
I'm back. That was just him letting me know that he is coming home. So in about 10 minutes he'll be here, maybe only 5.
Okay, well, we'll see. Not a problem. Parental duties come first, my friend.
Yeah, I'd get a lot of flack if I left him out on the doorstep for an hour and a half.
Yeah. That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good at all. All right, let's continue with the questions, because they are starting to pile up here. Catherine is asking, with the memories of eons to call upon, was it a large massive ship leaving and stripping the atmosphere off of Mars?
No, that was a planet. Or more to the point, it was an asteroid. And it wasn't an intentional thing. Basically, it was a ricochet. In other words, a massive body, if you will, cut close enough to it to pick the atmosphere off it. The same thing would happen it's kind of, how do I put it? If you've ever seen dry ice, the fog that shows up over top of dry ice, and you run something through it really fast, it'll pick up the vapors and draw them after it. Same problem. And this is why I said if there was it is very easy for a large enough ship to tear the atmosphere envelope off of a planet just by going through it. Just by skimming the planetary or the atmospheric envelope.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another question. BTO is asking, was the moon a universal biosphere once in a time, seeding life on habitable planets?
No. The moon was quite literally, it's what we call a captured body. What happens is when stars die or when collisions happen, especially if it's planet to planet and there's a moon attached to it that gets missed, what our moon was another one of these bodies that got all of a sudden cast adrift and just happened to fall into, it came by Earth close enough to draw into orbit. Now, in all fairness, and there's no way on the planet I can prove this one, but it was guided into place to help stabilize the atmosphere. And yes, there are races that actually have that kind of ability, but they don't tend to do it to planets that actually have life on them. They do it before planets have life on them. Primarily because making that kind of upheaval is going to wipe the planet's existing biosphere out. Make sense?
Absolutely. Let's get to Bob's question here. Bob is asking, some say there is a small sun inside planet Earth to provide light for races living in the caverns there. Is this sun natural or artificial? If so, how long has it been there?
Well, technically, it's not a sun. Is it natural? The answer is yes. And it's been there since the planet was built. In all fairness, it is a heat source, and it is one of the things that helps keep this planet in place. But it was literally designed as a perpetual furnace to keep the planet, if you will, habitable. But it's not, like I said, it's not, by loose definition, I guess you could call it a sun, in as much as it is a ball of energy. And it was certainly intended, if you will, to provide additional living space, although it didn't work out entirely as well as they would have liked. But there were a lot of complications that when you're building a planet, you just don't think about to start with. Or more to the point, you can't do anything about.
All right. Let's get to another question here then, because they are piling up. Is the universe then, according to Bob, a clock?
Now, technically the answer would be yes. It does have a certain component to it. And if we look at it, and this is where it gets to be really complicated, it is, but mankind has not evolved to the point of being able to track the clock properly yet. Okay, or more to the point, they haven't gotten back to that level. And a lot of the reason they haven't is because mankind got sidetracked. Okay, and what I mean by that is mankind, a machine, which is what humans have turned to, is computers. A machine cannot track the biomagnetic quantum, the quantum flux in a biological clock, which is essentially the way that the universe works. So trying to track it with a mechanical side, with a strictly mechanical item, is not going to work. It'll get close, it can approximate, but prime example, the Mayans actually had it figured out. Okay, and even they ran into the neat little problem of going, we ran out of, the calendar ended because the clock hit a certain point, much like the the 24-hour clock or the 12-hour clock gets to 12 and starts over. Okay, it wasn't intricate enough to read the whole 9 yards. Okay, and before anybody jumps on that, no, it's not a doomsday clock.
All right, let's get to another question here. Shar is wondering what's happening lately with any news on Planet X or Nibiru.
Well, the funny part there is, and this is where we run into an interesting snag, but Nibiru isn't a planet. It's a ship. Okay, has it come back in to watch what's going on? The answer is yes. But it doesn't signify the end of any form of life here. It just so happens that that is the path that they are on. It's kind of like running a trap line. Okay, go your entire route and come back and see where things are. So again, they are coming back into the area, but you got to remember, with Nibiru or Planet X or whatever people are choosing to call it, if it were a strictly natural phenomenon, at the size it is, at the speed it travels, it would tear this solar system apart. Okay, because of the gravitational flux and the shockwave that it sends. And yes, you don't need an atmosphere to cause a shockwave. And besides that, the thing keeps slowing down. And let's face it, if it was strictly a planet or a planetoid, it wouldn't slow down. It would carry on its normal pace. But it is occupied.
All right, let's get to another question here because we only got about 4.5 minutes before we got to go to break. BTO is asking, with the vastness of life on Sister Earth, are you connected with her, and would you consider her to be the planetary universe within this finite universe?
Am I connected with her? Far more than people may think. In my case, it's quite a literal connected. And in a sense, yes, Earth is very much a finite, if you will, universe inside a much bigger one. But understand, that is a stacking situation. In other words, this universe is also a finite universe inside a bigger one. Okay. That would be the biggest one. And I'm going to do something really, really off here because I'm about to get the phone to ring. That would be my munchkin rolling in.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Do you want to go get that?
Well, I will as soon as it rings. But yeah, like I said, am I connected to it? Yeah, I can feel the tectonic upheaval. This is one of the things that causes a problem for me. It's also, by the way, one of the things that causes the vertigo I end up suffering from periodically. Is because of the fact that I can feel when it is going into when it's having troubles.
Okay. Let's try and sneak in one more question. And guys, I just want you to know, as we continue on here, there's a lot of questions Keith may not know the answer to, and he's going to give you his opinion. Keith is an alien expert. I notice a lot of the questions have nothing to do with aliens. Okay? So he's going to give you his opinion on what he knows. All right? So let's try and bring this back into some alien talk rather than some of the questions that we have. I'm not getting pissed off. Don't think I'm getting upset or anything like that. I'm just trying to bring this show back into where we're supposed to be, which is, let's talk about some damn aliens. We don't talk enough about aliens around here. All right? Let's sneak this one in. Or do you think we have time? Is the boy right around there?
Well, he hasn't rung the bell, so if he is, he's still standing around outside talking to his mom, so I just go with it as it happens.
well, you know what? We might make it to break. We might make it to break here before all of a sudden the doorbell rings. Then he doesn't have to sit outside for another hour. Right? So
that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, not a problem. Usually I don't mind. I do have to say this. I'm not trying to snap at the audience here. Please don't take it that way. But, one of the things that we try and do when we have Keith here, his time is limited. He makes his time for us. I want people to actually have that ability.
Hold that thought.
To take that experience. To take that experience and to use it to help them. So going off on a lot of the tangents that we are going off on questions tonight, I don't think they're conducive to the entire conversation. They're great questions. Don't get me wrong. They are very good questions. And you know how I feel about all of your interaction. That's what makes this show so different, so much more fun. But sometimes what I have to do is I have to bring things back on topic to say, hey, boys and girls, we need to get back to where we got to go. So he's not going to know, about where Noah's Ark is. He's not going to know about the Apollo missions because he didn't work for NASA. He's going to assume, just like we all try to assume with our opinion. And people who are saying their opinions as fact, that's where it gets a little bit dangerous. So that's why I'm... Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on because we are just about to go to break here. But one thing that I'm saying to you here is we're trying to use Keith's experiences to learn about what we can figure out about what is happening to us. So I think that's the important part of where we are actually going to take absolutely everything going into hour number 3. So going into hour number 3, I want to remind all of you Spaced Out Radio listeners that on our website, click on the store, you will get your ability to get your VIP tickets for 10% off until July 31st on the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon in beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia at the Spruce Hills Spa and Resort. 3 days of interaction fun with all the weirdos like you and me, and I will be there. So let's do this thing together. Go check it on out. We'll be right back with more our Keith Andrews as he goes the distance with the ET Connection right after this break on Spaced Out Radio.
Looking for a great weekend getaway this fall? Hi there, this is Dave Scott. Come on up to the heart of British Columbia for the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon, being held at the Spruce Hills Spa and Resort in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Speakers from all over North America are coming to discuss Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and intuitiveness for the 3-day event, September 29th to October 1st. For more information, go to spacedoutradio.com and click on the Caribou Paracon banner and book your tickets today. Come to BC, where the paranormal is waiting for you.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin are back for Spaced Out Weekend while I wander off into the wilderness to try and find myself, my Zen, my Chi. Look up to the stars above, and maybe Carl will be watching. Hopefully. Maybe he'll come finally grab me. We'll see. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Spaced Out Weekend begins at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live in New Orleans on 107.7 FM, the United Public Radio Network. Love being a part of them and 160 countries where they broadcast into. Thanks, Joe Montaldo, for giving us your nights. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Autexius. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Autexius. So it's spelled, just so you know, AUTEXOUSIOUS. What the hell is that? Who made up that word? I want to know. Either way, that's your password for tonight. I'm done with it. Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to our Spaced Out Radio store, besides being like Teresa and Craig, who just got their SOR t-shirts, and you look great in them, you really do, you can pick up a poster, stickers. You can also get your tickets right now for the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon, which will be running September 29th to October 1st right here at 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia, at the beautiful Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. It's going to be a great weekend of fun. I would love to see all of you there. Tickets are 10% off until July 31st. I hope you grab them because I want to see you all there. Now, on our website, you can also join the encounter online. Read up on the news of the day by our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. For the final time tonight, I introduce our Keith Andrews. The ET Connection happens the first Friday of every month. Keith's next appearance will be on July 7th. Keith, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me once again, and welcome back to all the guests that we've got out there, all the listeners, both new and repeat. It has been a, shall we say, wild ride where it comes to some of the questions, but that's okay. You know, we've had a few hiccups. It's something I really want to clear up before we go very far, though, is I've noticed that BTO, he, number one, was apologizing for asking too many questions. Frankly, there's no such thing as too many questions. There's just a limit to the amount of time we have to work with them. And yes, I do realize, you know, and something that the listeners have to realize is Dave does a heck of a job trying to keep everything running in one direction. And from a host standpoint, he tries to organize things to stay on a certain topic. I don't necessarily cooperate. Because the reality is, as one individual put it, I'm trying to find out who it was. Parisi, as she put it, frankly, there's no topic I won't touch. But as we found out tonight, some days I'm a little off, and talking about my labs may create a bit of a cross-current. That doesn't mean it's a topic that's off limits. It just means it causes hiccups in communication lines. I think that's about the easiest way to put it. But
Well,
Go ahead.
let's go on with the questions here. Craig is asking, what would cause someone to only get good abductions when the follow-up crew came to investigate? They were told not to take that person.
Well, not knowing who the follow-up crew was, the best way I can put it is, well, frankly, some people, when they're picked up, because of their mindset, they may only see or may, in fact, only end up with a positive experience. Okay. It really depends on who it is that's picking them up, the mindset of the individual being picked up. You know, there's a lot of variables that can do it. You know, it's not just a case of one specific trait or one specific set of circumstances. There's a lot of variations that can amount to the same outcome. Make sense?
Absolutely. Let's move on to another question here. My son had an abduction experience here in town a few years ago. He looked out of the craft and saw himself standing where he was before they took him. After some time with them, he was put back. He was still standing there, smoking a cigarette as if before he spotted the craft. I have had many strange sightings, and who knows what else when I sleep. So, is the bloodline you were talking about, Keith, real? I also recall my mom and sister saying they saw a craft one night when I was very young.
Well, is the bloodline real? The answer is yes. But do understand the bloodline is not the only qualifier or the only marker that the various races use. Depending on the race, there could be a number of things doing it. Mm-hmm. As for the son being taken and being able to look back down through the window and see himself standing there, well, the reality is you're dealing with an astral abduction. Meaning... Right. They left the body behind, took the soul.
Right. Okay. That's cool. So when you have an abduction like that, how do you not know? How come you can remember the before and after, but you can't remember the during?
Because most of the time they do an overlay, which really boils down to modifying the memory patterns, by enhancing one aspect or another, or taking an actual similar memory and putting it in place. There's also the possibility that because it is such a foreign thing that the abducted in particular can't fathom, their brain will automatically wrap something else there and fill in the blanks. Okay, so the before and after, it's not traumatic. The being on the ship, looking up at an insectivorid, or looking up at a reptilian, or a gray for that matter, can be quite disconcerting to most people. So the brain does its own thing to protect the brain, to protect the integrity of the brain.
Let's move on to another question. This coming from Man Olive in Revolution Radio's chat room. Keith, do you agree Archons are aliens like Greys? Archons also come in human form. Can you talk about what you know or what your opinion is of them among us?
Well, are they like Greys only in as much as Archons are an alien race? You know, they're not human, so from that aspect, yes, they're like Greys. Archons are far more militarily inclined and far more interested in the potential hazard of humans getting off the planet, which humans have already done. But they're far more interested in the potential in the way of military use than what Greys are. Greys are far more interested in the scientific exploration of it, not the military use of it.
All right, let's move on to another question. This one comes from Everett in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on our website. Why would aliens have a trading post on the moon and not just use the Earth or include Earth in the training?
Well, that's the easy part. On Earth, white people are shooting black people because black people are black. Spaniards are shooting, Spanish people are shooting yellow people, the Orientals, because they're Oriental. And so putting a reptilian down here, you're gonna have a problem, because mankind is still an extremely young race, comparatively speaking, and very, quite frankly, xenophobic, meaning afraid of the strange and different. The other issue is that mankind has not evolved their technology to the point of being extremely functional on mass scale. And turning technology over to a warrior-based race, to a volatilely aggressive race, is not wise. We have guns that can punch holes in people. They have guns that can punch holes in planets. And given man's propensity to pull the trigger first and ask what the problem is second, that's not a good thing to give somebody. But it does, by putting it on the moon, it puts them close enough to the moon, Earth, to be able to watch what's going on Earth. Because rest assured, Earth has telescopes that can see the moon easy. Well, vice versa. They've got telescopes on the moon that can see the Earth. But that would be the primary reason right there.
So is the moon then more of a research post for them? Is that what you're saying?
Not exactly a research post. In all fairness, it's a complete community. Is there a lot? Are there a lot of people that come there? And I use the term "people" to refer to all sentient races. Are there a lot that come there to study Earth? The answer is absolutely yes. It's kind of like putting an observation deck in place so that you can watch the humans evolve, watch civilization evolve from a very primitive society to see how it evolves socially. Kind of like, if you will, a history lesson in one way. Talk to any archaeologist. They'd love to see how the actual animals, many of them, would love to see how the actual animals lived before the bones were there, or before that hut collapsed. Okay, the off-worlders simply have that option of watching mankind evolve and crawl out of the mud.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another question. Bob is asking, besides how good the world would be if we all took the time to smoke a doobie, how special or rare are we to the ETs? Do they consider us to be special or lower life forms from the pond?
It sort of depends on the race, but first of all, and I'm just going to go sideways on you here for half a second, the issue of the world would be a great plan, a better place if everybody would just grab a doobie. I know people that have paranoid delusions when they get high from doobie. So that won't make them into really nice people. It doesn't happen to many, but let's face it, that's just not a fun run. Now, the answer as to, on the whole, the aliens actually find humans very fascinating, very special, and at the same time, extremely dangerous. Okay, they are fascinated by humans and humans' ability to handle what they refer to as zero-point energy. Basically energy that doesn't have a qualifier. Humans have the ability, much to the chagrin of the other races, of being able to manipulate that energy by simple, sheer will. So that aspect fascinates many of the other races. And, especially when you look at the speed that humans heal and their aggression, it does lead to a very intriguing outlook as far as the off-worlders are concerned.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another question. This one coming from Deborah. She says, Keith, have you ever been to Mount Shasta, California, and or have you had any knowledge of an ET race living inside the mountain?
Well, personally, the best I can tell you as far as Mount Shasta goes, unless my parents went by there when I was a kid, the answer is no. But I do know full well it's not a race living under Mount Shasta, but multiple races. And yeah, they're very definitely there. I use the term definitely. You get to figure out how to prove it. But it is, Mount Shasta is occupied.
I believe it's the Lemurians who are said to be there. The Lemurians.
Only some of them. But, yes, they are. Lemurians are the ones that I was referring to had 100% total global peace. And in all fairness, what killed the Lemurian race off wasn't a war. It was a thought. Quite an ill-thought-out thought, really, when you think about it. And when we look back at it, it was really not the brightest thing to do. But we hadn't done it before, so what the heck? Turned out to be the worst possible decision anybody could have made, because literally in a heartbeat, half the population dropped dead. And when you've got 10 billion people holding a planet together by thought, and you kill off half the people, everything that they're manifesting and that they're sustaining with their own thought all of a sudden ceases to exist. The civilization collapsed literally overnight.
Let's get to another question here, this one from BTO. Who are those ETs and interdimensionals that you, Keith, have been in contact with? A synopsis of all the species.
Well, let's start with the issue of when we talk about interdimensionals, let's be clear. We're talking about transvibrationals. The difference is this. Everything that exists in our world, everything that exists, is of the third dimension. It's not from the fourth, fifth, eighth, none of it. But there are different races that vibrate at different levels, and therefore become physically invisible and intangible, whereby you could actually walk through them and not know you were walking through them. Or vice versa, they can walk through you and you wouldn't know it. Now, that being said, right now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm in the process of actually documenting the races, and I think right now I'm sitting at 54. And that's everything from humanoid that could walk amongst humans and you wouldn't even know that they were there, like that they were not human, straight up and through elementals. In other words, living fire, living air, living water. Okay, and pretty much everything in between. And as far as their motivations go, the majority are of a neutral nature. There are a few, Srazazians being an obvious one for me, that are definitively allies. And then you have the ant folk that are clearly not of a, shall we say, amicable nature. But none of them are really inclined to wipe out the planet, much less conquer it. Although, in all fairness, the Tekleks, which are your 4.5 to 5.5 foot reptilians, kind of look like raptors, would love to take home an overstock of humans, because, quite frankly, they find them rather tasty. But they are actually, in all fairness, much as they've got a civil war going on because of that, they are trying to protect their own world. And it just so happens that Earth happens to have the material they require. Make sense?
Well, absolutely. Let's get to our next question. Catherine is asking, why are there small, medium, and large grays?
Well, that's kind of like why are there small, medium, and large humans? They grow that way. I know that sounds like an odd answer. There are two distinct classes. The short stubbies are the scientists. The tall, gangly ones are your controllers. They're the ones that dictate what experiments are being done, who goes where, who does what. And there are other races that are very similar in appearance, but really not greys. But if you're just looking at the head, they may well appear to be a gray. And that's why I say it really boils down to why are they various sizes? Well, genetics. They grow that way.
But is there a difference in the way they act? Okay, because I've heard from other people that there are good grays and bad grays.
There absolutely are. Just there are good people and bad people. Good humans and bad humans. But as far as the races go, there are multiple different colors of grays. But when we look at the two distinct different ones, the short ones are scientists, and the majority of them are neutral. They are there to take blood samples, to run tests, to perfect the hybridization program, that sort of thing. You get the occasional one that is very much a mercenary. Still a scientist, still wanting to do the experiments, but far more interested in selling their information to the highest bidder. And then you get the occasional few that are quite literally, the wrong term because we're dealing with grays, but humanitarian in nature. They are trying to do what's right for the human race, not necessarily what's right for the scientific advancement of their own race.
Getting back to a Corey Good question from Bob, he is saying, Corey Good, a former super soldier, has had contact with a species called the blue avians. What do you know about them? They are aliens that literally look like birds with a humanoid body.
Yes, and they are, on the whole, decent people. They don't think like humans, which does cause some complications, especially where communication is involved. But they are an amicable race on the whole. The unfortunate part is because of the speed that they think and the speed that they act, if you will, they do have a tendency of getting frustrated with, basically what they view as a very retarded race. And I don't mean that from a disrespectful standpoint, but referring to them finding humans think far too slowly and far too complexedly for their liking. So, they can get a little testy on occasion, but they're not, they're, like I said, on the whole, amicable. Okay. But are they real? The answer is, oh yeah. See, there is another avian race, the Uka, which are far more in appearance to, if you will, a humanoid owl. A bipedal owl that has arms as well as wings.
Let's move on here. Let's move on to another question here.
Absolutely.
Shar is asking, doesn't it make sense that no one can believe anything that people remember, since they can manipulate our memory and thinking, they being the aliens?
Well, does it make sense, the cognitive thought process? The answer is technically yes. But if you take that to its logical answer, to its logical outcome, you also couldn't, therefore, trust that anybody you were talking to was being honest. It was put to me one day years ago, decades back. And think about the confusing way this goes, because it takes it right smack into the heart of philosophy. I was asked one day, what if, and the person talking to me looked at me and goes, what if I'm not really here? What if you're imagining the fact that I'm here? I'm not actually asking you what you think I'm asking you, but you're responding to what you think I'm asking. So when you do that, I hear the response you're saying, but I don't hear exactly what you're saying. I hear what I think you're saying, and therefore the conversation goes back and forth. Now, you have to make a choice, and every individual that has a thought process has to make the same choice. Am I going to go with the evidence and say, okay, we'll run with it and just presume that the conversation is happening and that the memories are accurate? Or am I going to disregard everything and be absolutely incapable of functioning? And I know that sounds like a completely backwards way of looking at it. Is it possible that you could be right, that people shouldn't trust anybody? Absolutely. It is possible that that could happen. However, it would result in society coming to an absolute, complete standstill because people would be afraid to move. Okay, and because that is where, if you will, paranoia gets a real good grip and your brain will just completely turn in on you. Does that make sense from your standpoint, Dave?
Absolutely. I got a couple questions here from the preacher Eric Markham, and he is asking, does it puzzle the off-worlders that the same species has created Buddha, Gandhi, and Jesus, also produced the evil of Stalin, Pol Pot, and Hitler?
Well, it confuses them, but at the same time they realize mankind is built. First of all, mankind was built for war. Second of all, mankind was built with the capacity of personal choice, freedom of choice, and freedom of negative interaction. So to their way of thinking, if you have the possibility of both thought processes, it only stands to reason some people are going to choose the good ones and some are going to choose the bad. Okay, especially when you look at it from the higher-minded races, they will look at the inevitability of, in spite of the guidance of Christ and Buddha and Gandhi, you're going to get the Hitlers, the Stalins, the leaders of the Mau Mau. You're going to get the negative peoples. Because the possibility is there, therefore the reality is they will arise. Okay. So does it confuse them? Not half as much as it confuses humans.
All right, let's get to another question from the preacher then. Does the duality of our natures, the capacity to be both good and evil in the same psyche, seem to be a common thread in all alien races as well?
The answer is yes, but certain races have managed to attain a much more dominant focus on one or the other. A sentient race across the board must have the opportunity to choose good or evil. Okay, good behavior, bad behavior, supportive or, creative or destructive. For any race to evolve, they have to have the capacity for destruction in order to choose to turn into, to focus on creation. And every one of the races, just because this is just a natural evolution of it, every one of the races has their own version of what they consider a god, a spiritual guide, or multiple gods that help them decide what is good, what is not. And like humans, they have a tendency of screwing things up. Otherwise, we wouldn't have multiple wars going on that aren't on this planet. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on here. BTO is asking, have you experienced or encountered Pleiadians, Andromedans, Nibiruians, Arcturians, Lyrians, etc.? Sorry,
Yeah.
he says sorry, but this is first time listening to you, so he's geeked right up over your answers.
Well, first of all, BTO, no need to apologize. You keep that up, you're going to end up apologizing for most of the night. I think you have been. No problem with the questions. The answer to the question, though, all of the above would be yes. Quite frankly, the whole 9 yards of them. I personally have dealt with in excess of 50. So it's quite an extensive array of people, and the funny part about it is it doesn't matter the physical configuration. People are people. Doesn't matter which race we're talking about. They all quite literally want exactly the same thing. Okay, meaning they desire to be recognized. They desire to have a roof over their head. They desire to have food in their body. When they're happy, they laugh. When they're sad, they cry. Now, there are circumstances where a given race may not do that. Like, for instance, animals or races that do not have tear ducts will not physically cry. This doesn't mean they don't hurt. Okay, so I mean that's the way of looking at it. But have I dealt with them? Yeah, every one of the races that he's just mentioned, quite seriously, I've dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Do you prefer dealing with the critters or the creatures? I guess we could call them critters too, that are a little bit different than what we would consider normal, or do you prefer dealing with the humanoid type beings?
Well, this is going to be a problem for you. Well, not for you personally. You know the answer to this one. The answer is no. I don't actually separate them. I prefer dealing with people that have an honest willingness to communicate, to try and get, to do their best to get along with people, to evolve in a positive fashion. I don't care, quite seriously, what race they are, what skeletal configuration they have, what gender they are. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. So I don't actually have a preference of which race I'm dealing with, or what style of race, if you will. There are certain ones that I certainly don't want to hang around their neighborhood. Like I'm not going to the elemental plane of fire to deal with the fire elementals without having some sort of protection. But do I prefer one race over the other? And this includes, do I prefer aliens over humans or humans over aliens? They're all identical in my eyes. I don't know if that's something people can wrap their brain around, but it is.
Excuse me, I've been battling a cold lately. That one I usually have my microphone mute on, but that one snuck away from me. Getting back to the original topic of the night, with children, how can parents tell if their children are being taken?
Well, sadly, that's a complicated setup. One of the biggest issues is you've got to watch for repetitive behavior. Okay. Oftentimes, if a child is stuck staring out the window, and this is not something's got to be really stressed. What I'm about to say is some of the symptoms, but every symptom does not in and of itself indicate your child is being abducted. Okay. For instance, there are kids that will just stare off into space and there's nothing wrong with them, they're just kids. But some of the differences, or some of the things that can be a giveaway, or more to the point, point you in that direction, is if a child is repeatedly going to the same place and staring at a specific spot or in a specific direction. This may indicate a complication. If a person, if a child is reacting negatively towards a certain tone, and it's only that tone, then the odds are you could have a complication. But again, primary example, epileptics may zone out, and you may not know the child's epileptic, but you hit a certain tone and they may zone completely out. It doesn't mean they've been abducted. It means you hit a note that their brain just shuts down on. So we do have to be aware that just because certain symptoms may point in that direction does not guarantee to make it that direction. Okay. Many times you will find with a child that's been abducted that they will display a radically different behavioral pattern to what they were known to display. Okay, and these are just a couple of the things that can indicate it.
So, if a child comes up and says, I had a friend come over last night, because, the innocence of a child does come through.
Yeah.
A lot of parents will actually blow that away. Okay? They will blow off that steam that it was just a dream or, something along those lines. Yet, are we paying enough attention to what children say?
That's a real loaded question. The answer is, you are right. Many times a child will go, a parent will say, who are you talking to? Who were you talking to? Oh, I had a friend over. There's 3 causes for that. And in none of the cases should they be just categorically dismissed. But you also don't want to go making a big deal out of it. Because the things that can happen is a child's imagination is a wonderful playground that many people kind of, if you will, ignore. And rightfully so, because they're just goofing off. Some children, if you pay attention to it, if you ask them for more detail, they will undoubtedly, if you catch them right away, they will undoubtedly give you more detail. And the more you understand about what they're looking at, the easier it is to cope with. Okay. And then, of course, the other little problem is there's the occasional few that are actual natural-born seers that see the people that have passed away, and they don't have a functional way of explaining it, so they just go, it was a friend. Again, none of these are bad things, but they can all affect.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to another question. This one comes from #SpacedOutRadio by Deb. She goes, do you believe reptilians helped Nazi Germany before World War II?
Well, the answer would be yes, but let us be clear. Off-worlders also helped virtually every other major superpower at the same time. This was not something that was just in Nazi Germany's hands. Okay. There's no question that the Germans were in contact with off-worlders. No question at all. I'm just waiting for the rest of the governments to come forth and say, so were we. Okay. There were even some off-worlders that went into the smaller communities to warn people and get the people out of the smaller communities that were being overridden by the wars. The thing is, the off-worlders have a great interest in this planet surviving. Which is why, when everything went, when things got really complicated, the first nuclear bomb was it was necessary for mankind to figure out what it was capable of, but it was not supposed to be utilized for killing each other. It was supposed to be utilized for power. Yeah, so that's why they didn't stop the first one, but have subsequently stopped a fair number of near disasters.
BTO has a question here. Keith, what is your stance on star seeds and walk-ins?
They're very definitely real. Absolutely. The one thing about it is walk-ins happen when a given person came here, because everybody comes here with a certain amount of wisdom, certain aspects of wisdom they desire to gain during their life. And it's after they get here that their choices and their actions will determine whether they learn about whatever the wisdom was by going through it themselves or by interacting with other people. Now, if a person has come in with the idea, I only want to experience, I only want to go through the first 8 years of my life, right? I just need to clear something up that happened at that point, and then I'm good to go. And another person says, well, I really don't care about the first 8 years, but I really do want to take a look down this other road that this 8-year-old child is already on the path to, right? And they'll swap out, kind of like changing drivers in mid-stride. Okay, starseeds, well, in all fairness, most humans, most entities that are born on this planet are ultimately starseeds, but what they're talking about is groups of people that are closely related enough that their genetic their quantum pattern is quite literally family of whoever they're around. And it's not always physical bloodline. Matter of fact, it's very rarely physical bloodline that happens. Does that make sense?
Sure. Let's get to a couple questions from Joe here. We're never sure if it's Joe or Joe's hair that is asking the question, because he's got just an amazing mane, much like you. Keith, you have vast knowledge of aliens. What is your opinion of the aliens' endgame? What are they doing here?
Well, that depends entirely on which race. Ultimately, Earth itself, Sol 4, it basically is a repository of phenomenal amounts of knowledge, of phenomenal amounts of information. And it is, because the human race is such a young race, is fantastic for xenobiology studies, for the xenopolitical perspectives, for the evolving societal superstructure. So many of if we take the neutral races, they are very caught up in the knowledge base that is happening as mankind evolves. See what they're capable of, see where they take it. The negative races, or the negative inclined, look at the whole process as, how can I turn this into something I can use to my own benefit? Okay, and of course then you have the positive ones that are genuinely here to try and help guide mankind to make intelligent choices. So I mean, and it can vary one entity to even amongst the same race, very much like humans can. You follow?
Absolutely. Joe's next question is, were all the Chimera Egyptian gods based on different alien races or Nephilim types?
All of them? No, but the greater majority of them, yes. Understand, if you take a Westerner and you give him a mini Bic lighter, conceal it completely, and you take him down into the Congo, into the heart of the Congo amongst the pygmies, And that Westerner, while concealing the bic in their hand, waves their hand over top of the closed hand and goes abracadabra or whatever, and at the same time, keeping the bic concealed, flicks it and a flame comes to life. To the Congolesians, that Westerner is a god. The same thing applies when you have a race that is capable of traveling light years in a heartbeat and showing up in, on your planet. Okay, that's where the big issue is. Make sense?
Sure. I never know when you're done, so I just kind of wait.
Yeah, I haven't. We got to figure out a way that maybe I should CB talk and go such and such over.
Well, I've kind of taken "make sense" as my cue to speak, so just keep that one up.
Okay.
We'll let the audience know in our little segment there and what we're doing. So if you hear Keith say "make sense," that means another question is coming.
Works for me.
Exactly. BTO is saying, so walk-ins are possessions and starseeds are closely connected to the galactic universal family?
Negative. Walk-ins are not possessions any more than if you're driving a car and you decide you don't want to drive the car anymore, so you voluntarily get out and voluntarily let somebody else get in to drive your car. It's not a theft. It's a voluntary exchange. Okay, so that's where the negative comes. Starseeds are people that are connected much more closely on a spiritual level, and it may not be a physical connection at all. It may just be the spiritual level that the connection happens. Okay, but that's the biggest difference between them. Make sense?
Makes sense works. That one works too. We only have about 5.5 minutes with you tonight. It's been another show that has absolutely flown on by, and I thank you so much for doing this. How often do you have experiences? And what I'm saying, I'm not saying the dream type, Keith. I'm not saying, you're having a nap in the afternoon or you see some sort of figure, that looks like a shadow figure of an alien or something like that. I'm saying true eye-to-eye contact, that there is a physical being standing right in front of you. How often does that happen?
At least once, sometimes twice a month, if I were to look at it from a logistical standpoint, if you will. Depending on whether, that doesn't necessarily, it's probably more frequent than that in all fairness. But they do tend to let me sort of take care of my family. We've had a number of discussions about that one. Because the reality is that, for me, it's just, it's a normal thing like going to the grocery store for most people. But when we're talking, I'm presuming you're referring to physical, face-to-face, extended time, not just somebody dropping in 5 minutes and away they go. When I'm talking about the, couple of times a month sort of thing, I'm referring to where we're dealing with an extended period. Okay, if we look at the face-to-face where there is clear potentiality for, shall we say, physical damage showing up, which would sort of indicate a person being there, you're looking at usually 4 to 6 times a month, where and this is in addition to still having to do everything else, which can, by the way, really screw up my day. Make sense?
It can. It can screw up your day. Because for a lot of people out there, and the reason why I ask that, I know myself, Keith, I'm not satisfied with anything that happens in a dream state. The skeptic in me cannot comprehend whether that was real or whether that was just a nightmare or some sort of dream. Okay? I've had the sightings that I've had, and I want more. And I have tried to put that energy out there, that juju, whatever you want to call it, out there to say, look, dudes, if you want to come see me, this is how you got to come see me. And yet, they don't show up. They stand me up every time, Keith. Stand me up every time. You know, and I realize it's on their watch, not mine. I get that. But for people who are multiple contactees, such as yourself or myself, do you get to the point where you're just tired of this whole dream state crap, and if you want me, come get me, but at least come see me face to face?
Oh, yeah. You definitely, I've definitely gone through that road. It's like enough is enough. I mean, where it got to me decades ago now was I keep waking up with not little scoop marks. I'm talking gashes that were 6 inches long. And it's like, for pity's sakes, people, knock it off. Like, enough of the physical damage. Thank you very much. And rest assured, the day they decided to drop me on my head and miss the bed altogether, that was not something I was impressed with.
So, lead-up question or a follow-up question from BTO, is an encounter solely based on 5 senses or beyond?
Absolutely beyond. Although, in all fairness, most humans only recognize 5 senses, so they question the beyond issue, which is where you run into the real snag. The thing people have to remember is just because it doesn't make sense doesn't necessarily mean it's not real. And the way it was put one day was, when you remove all logical possibility, whatever is left, however illogical it may seem, is the answer. Okay, and this is where people have to realize that, life isn't necessarily as black and white as what they feel, or as what they hope, for that matter. Make sense?
Absolutely, makes sense. That's our new term, too. Makes sense. I like it.
Well,
it
at
works
least
for me.
If it doesn't, you can ask.
It works for me, man. It really works for me. You know what? I gotta tell you, man. This one wore me out. Your next visit on this show will be Friday, July 7th. I'm sure KJ still will not invite us to the party.
Well, you just gotta make sure that she makes it up to the Paracon.
She is coming to the Paracon, and I think her husband Bob is as well. So, but he may have to work. But we're got our fingers crossed that Bob is going to make it as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Sick.
Yeah, his job doesn't really allow that kind of stuff, but that's okay. That's okay. It's always a lot of fun with you, Uncle Keith. It really is.
Well, I tell you, if it weren't for the questions, the audience has been phenomenal. The listeners have asked some incredible questions, and as we've stated earlier, I don't have a problem with answering any of the questions that I can answer, and if I don't know them, I'm going to tell you I don't have that. But thank you so much for having us here again. It's been a heck of a ride.
For sure, my friend. You hold on. I got to wrap this thing up. If you are listening to our music in the background, that's Little Brother Is Watching by our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL. He is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, bringing us in and taking us home every single night. I want to remind you that you can go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and start to pick up your VIP tickets with a 10% discount until July 31st in the Spaced Out Radio store for the first annual Caribou Paracon, September 29th to October 1st. I want to say thanks to all of my teammates who helped put this together. We got Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer from the Encounter Online, Jolene Lammers, Web Design, Lana Scott, Paracon Coordinator, Catherine James, Social Media, Bob Davis, the intro voice extraordinaire, Director of Business Development, Kim Gandy, Thomas McGowan on sales. And I thank all of you, our valued listeners, for checking on us tonight. Remember, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin, Spaced Out Weekend coming up tomorrow night and Sunday, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. It's going to be a great show, people. Thanks to everyone who has T-shirts. Teresa, you look beautiful in your Spaced Out Radio T-shirt. I saw your pic. I did. I want it for my website. Let me know if I can have it. And until we meet again on Monday. What's that date? Monday the 5th. We're talking Dogman with Chris Irizarry. It's going to be fun. Do me a favor, my friends. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Meet with me on Monday and tell a friend, because together we will own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.